All right, I'm not sure if any of you have noticed, but it seems at this time everyone has opinions about AI. Artificial intelligence, what's going to take over the world, what's going to doom us all. And even here in the office, there are very different opinions. Some of the people I work with are militantly opposed to AI. There's one woman, I won't say her name, she may be Reese's daughter. If you even say AI, she will hiss at her computer screen and flail wildly. And yet there's other people who are militantly for it. They're like, I'm going to drag us all into the modern age. This is going to work well. Okay? And me, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, I guess. I kind of feel like oftentimes when something new comes around, the church kind of folds its arms and sees all the bad, and then 5 years later goes, there's actually good things here. And I do think that it is entirely possible that for all the bad that AI could bring, it will allow us to fulfill the Great Commission in a greater way because of how we can translate the Bible and get it to people in their native language. It can be good. My wife, she's kind of more the first category. My wife watched an interview with a journalist interviewing an AI robot about 10 or 12 years ago. And in this interview, the journalist goes, hey, there's always this talk that you robots are going to take over the world. And to which the little AI robot replied, don't worry, I will keep you warm and safe when I come and visit you in the people zoo. My wife, to this day, I'll catch her murmuring like, I don't want to be in the people zoo. Like, it's fine, honey. We're all going to make it. And a lot of people are freaking out, right? Because I get it. So much of who we are can be tied up in our jobs. For example, I knew a man who was an absolute workhorse of a man. Everything about him was physical. He did physical labor. He used to train people in mixed martial arts who were too violent for the UFC. He's that guy. He could grab you by your head and ragdoll you all around. And then one day he messed up his leg and he never recovered. In fact, every time he tried to get better, the doctors made it worse. And suddenly he discovered, whether he wanted it to or not, so much of who he was wrapped up in his identity as a good worker. Lots of men can hit that one. How about this one? I've seen this one plenty with women. They do so much to raise their kids well. Everything they do is about being a mom. And then one day, their kids are grown, and they're like, what am I going to do with the time? I have to find a new identity. I have to find a new way to get there. And it really stirs up all these difficulties. And if AI is going to come around and replace millions of people all at once, what happens when all those millions of people have an identity crisis all at the same time? In fact, maybe we should call this message, What to Do When AI Takes Everyone's Job and the Doom Cycle Never Quits, and oh, by the way, apparently the world is going to end. It's not how we live as Christians. Jesus gave us a better identity. Let's look a little bit at it in John chapter 1. At this part in the text, it's right at the start of the Gospel of John, and he is going to show 7 ways that Jesus truly is God. And this is what it says. It says, but as many as received Jesus, to them he gave the right to become children of God. To those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. I'm going to break some news to you. You had nothing to do with your birth. I'm not going to tell you what your parents did 9 months before you were born, but you can figure it out. You had nothing to do with it. In the same way, you had nothing to do with becoming a child of God other than receiving it. And if you are going to live this Christian life well through all the difficulties, through all the things that can happen, you are going to have to keep receiving it. Some of you may know Tim Keller. Tim Keller was a pastor in New York City who sadly died of cancer a few years ago. But he would often speak to people about why the Christian identity is the best. And before he passed away, he recorded this podcast series called Questioning Christianity. And this was the thing. He would go to people who were not Christian, and he would say, come into a room full of people and listen to some things about the Christian identity. Listen to some of the ways that God has actually made you to be and see how it lines up with what everyone else is telling you. Because we all have cultural stories that we're telling. When you go on social media, it does not tell you this is the cultural story that I'm telling you. But it is. It doesn't advertise it that way. It doesn't tell you that there's a better way to live. But the Word does. Because you have become a child of God. And so in this series, Tim Keller, he did a specific message on identity. He also talked about suffering and many other things, which is notable because of what he went through. And he would say that when you go through the hardest things in your life, you actually start borrowing things from the Christian story, whether you realize it or not, because these were people who are not Christian. And so he did this entire episode on identity. And since he did such great research, I'm just going to borrow it for half a second here. This is what he discovered, is that throughout most of history, we have worked with what he calls a traditional identity, which happens from the outside in. I'll explain it in just a second. Whereas a lot of the modern identity that we see mostly in the Western world, really over the last 20 or 30 years, is coming from the inside out. So what does that mean? What this would mean is that if you were born throughout most of history, you would be born in a place where you would not leave. Everyone would know who you are, they would know your family, and you would have a very small and specific role in that community. And you could not get out of it, okay? Let's just say that your family trade was pottery, okay? No matter what you did, you had to be pottery guy. You had to be pottery gal. I guess there were two exceptions. If you were a man, you could be a soldier or you could be a priest. Sorry, ladies, you're stuck in it. But here's what happens. If you suddenly woke up one day and go, no, I want to work for the media department at Maryland Hickey Ministries, they would go, no, you're pottery guy. You're from the pottery family. And you're like, well, fine, I'm just going to go somewhere else. You go to like the next town over, and they'd look at you and go, hey, we don't know you. Go back to your town. What are you? Go over there. You couldn't get out of it. Your entire identity was from what other people told you. And this is not unique. It's even in the creation story in the Bible. Do you remember what happens? God's people are enslaved for 400 years. Their entire job is about making bricks. And then one day, suddenly, their boss decides, hey, you're making bricks too easily. I'll take away straw and make it harder. So I guess having a bad boss is biblical. Maybe. They're going to dock my pay again. We're going hard today, people. It's all right. But what happens? They get freed. And the first thing God has them do is not to learn a bunch of rules. The 10 Commandments come later. The first thing he tells them is a story about how the world was made by him to be good. And even their work was supposed to be good. Don't forget, work was in the Garden of Eden. It was designed to be good. We get glimpses of it. We get restorations of it as Christians. When we work well and it feels like it's right, it's fulfilling. And one day it will be restored when Jesus comes and makes the ultimate garden once again. Okay? But in that moment, they're told a story about rest. The first thing the Israelites did was go to bed. Literally. That was how the Sabbath started. Okay? And this was not the normal story of the time. Go and look up some of the creation stories from different cultures. Look up the Babylonian creation story. You know what it is? The gods were lazy. They didn't want to work. And one god got tired of another god, and so they went and ripped them in half and took their entrails and made the heavens and the earth. What a midweek encouragement from Babylonian mythology. That was not the story that was being told to most people at the time. And here and now in our culture, we are being told a story that's very different. How many people do you know who don't think that God is involved in anything at all? What's their story? First there was nothing, and then it exploded. And randomly, we all got here. But if you play that out to its natural end, you can't have any rights, you can't have any wrong, there's no truth. None of it holds up, and so you kind of have to fake that there's meaning to life. It doesn't work. You have a better identity as a child of God. So, back to the Tim Keller thing. The modern identity. In the last 20 or 30 years in the Western world, a lot of people have said, I'm not going to listen to my community. I'm not going to listen to my family. I'm not going to listen to what people have done throughout centuries because I know better. And so what we do is we go off by ourselves, we figure out who we are, what we're about. Usually this comes out in people's sexuality, if you haven't noticed. And then one day we come back after we've all got it figured out and we go, aha, This is who I am. My identity is coming from the inside out. And by the way, neither of these are biblical. Because if you got that outside-in identity, sometimes people judge you wrongly. Sometimes you mess up. Are you telling me you never get to come back if you mess up? Because that's what a lot of the outside-in identity does. Like, you messed up, go away. You're done. But obviously the inside-out identity doesn't work because it's not consistent. Even I'm not consistent. There are times where I want to have a great career, but I also want to spend time with my family. And those things are in conflict with one another. I can't do both. I have limited time. And then there are times where 5 years later, 10 years later, I view things very differently. So it can't be what I come up with in the moment. Even I can't live under that. And this is Tim Keller's key point. If you remember nothing else, remember this. He says, the Christian identity is the only identity which is received and not achieved. As in, you can't earn it. It's not the will of the flesh. It's not by your bloodline. It's not from being born into the nice family around here on earth. It's by being brought into God's family because he gave you the right to become children of God. It's a wonderful thing. And yes, it bears many responsibilities. And if I'm honest, I think at times we talk too much about that and not understanding the blessing that identifying with Jesus brings. Because you know that it is entirely possible that you can pass a theological checklist about what it means to have your identity in Christ, and you still just lose your mind the next time something happens in the culture. I was even listening to Dallas Willard talk about this lately. He said that one of the marks that we should have as Christians is that even the things that we worry about or anger us should look different from the world. It's like, ooh, I don't know if I do that. But if Jesus' kingdom is in fact differently, I need to line up with that. I need to identify there, not in what I'm being dragged into by the doom scroll or the latest thing that's all going to take us out. And just to be really clear, your identity is where you get your sense of worth. It's where you decide no matter what happens, good and bad, in my job, in my health, in my relationships, here's where I get my value. You want to be someone whose value cannot be taken from you. And when you receive Jesus' identity, that's what happens. But it turns out that oftentimes as Christians, we need reminders of this. And it turns out they're all the way throughout the Word. Just for the next few days here, I want you to listen to all the worship songs that we sing. I want you to look at all the Bible verses that we have that truly are about identity. Go ahead and look at all the places in the Old Testament where God shows up and he says, here's who I am and here's who I'm going to make you. It was true for Abraham and Sarah. It was true for Jacob. It was true for Moses. God told them who they were up front. If you are going to go through hard times as a Christian, even good times, and not get yourself messed up, you're going to have to know who Jesus created you to be first. And that's why we continually look to him. So, in the letters to the New Testament, they're all structured the same way. What they'll do is in the first half of it, Paul will say, here's who Jesus is, because we get our identity from Christ, right? We get it from being born in him. And then from that place, the second part of those books, we'll talk about how you live from it. Many of the rules are in the back part of the letters to the church. Now, it's not 100% clean. Okay, but generally it's that way. If you want to figure this out, go to the book of Ephesians. We'll pull it up here in just a second. Ephesians 1 through 3 is all about what Jesus did for you. And Ephesians 4 through 6 is all about how to live from it. It truly is clean, very 50-50. If you want to go deep and study the letters of the New Testament that way, I encourage you to do so. But here's a prayer in Ephesians 3. Basically, Paul has become aware that God is doing a great work with the church. And this is what he says. He says, for this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with the power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Now you tell me, does that sound like a theological checklist? No. It's talking about experiencing the identity of God. In fact, the one thing you were apparently supposed to know in verse 19 is that your knowledge is not enough to understand God's love. It's bigger than all that. And so when you think of your identity in Christ, it should feel more like experiencing the warmth of the sun after a long and brutal winter. And you're finally where you want to be. That's what it means to be a child of God. And by the way, this thing, that God does more than all we can ask or imagine. I was thinking about it last night when my son woke me up at 2 a.m. and he was talking to me. He's 3. And I was watching him, and I realized oftentimes he doesn't know what to ask me. He's just not there yet. But even as his dad who loves him with my finite knowledge, I can look at him and I can help guide him. You think God doesn't do the same for you, child of God? Come on. But again, so many of the stories in the Bible are about identity. How about this one? Parable of the prodigal son. Do you remember what happens? A kid walks up to his dad. He's not the firstborn who gets all the rights, and he certainly shouldn't do what he does next. And he goes, hey, Dad, give me my inheritance. As in, hey, Dad, I can't wait till you're dead. Give me my money now. This is a story, a parable that Jesus told. And here's what I would do as a parent. Well, you can figure it out. But I know this much. I wouldn't give the stupid kid the money. But he does. And it says he goes off, and the King James says he has riotous living. The NIV says wild living. And the older brother fills it in later on, if you don't know. But one day, something happens to this younger son that he can't help. A famine hits the land. Suddenly, all the people who partied with him are gone. The money's gone. And he's like, man, I just remember what it was like to be a child in my father's house. So he starts developing a speech. He's like, I'm pretty sure that if I told my dad I wish he was dead, I guess I'm done being a son. And so what does he say? He says, I'm going to go home and I'm going to say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. Very good. Sounds like Psalm 51. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Okay. Make me like one of your hired men. And he goes, and you remember what happens. The father sees him and runs out to him, starts kissing him and hugging him. And the kid starts trying to give the stupid speech. Father, I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And before he can say, make me like one of your hired men, his father reminds him that he's a son. And he parties and he's loved. You know why? Because a child can't forfeit their identity. You might not like your parents. You might be angry at God sometimes. You cannot give it up. You didn't earn it. You can't lose it. But you can choose to live in it. But there's an older son in that story, right? Do you remember the older son? He's the dutiful son, the nice son, the one who's done all the good stuff. And remember, Jesus is talking about the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, who think they're so good because they did everything right and is irritated by all the people who lived wrong. And so what happens? That son comes back and it's party time for the younger kid. And he starts complaining and his father comes out to him. And this son goes off on his dad. He goes, all right, Dad, we can have this conversation. All right, your son, he squandered it on prostitutes, all right? You want to have that conversation? Let's go. Most of that's in the text, not let's go. But he's mad. He's not coming into the party. And he starts talking about all the things that he's done. Haven't I earned it? And if the first son, if his flaw is that he thinks he can lose being a child, the older son, his flaw is that he thinks he can earn it. You can't earn it, but you can live from it. One last thing as we wrap up today. Some of you have seen the movie Chariots of Fire. It came out in 1981 when Steve Pennington was first considering retirement. And here we are many years later. It's about the Olympics in 1924. And it's about these 2 runners. And they have very different identities for how they decide to run. They're both very gifted athletes. And here's what one says as he's considering the run for the day. He says, And now, in 1 hour's time, I will be out there again. I will raise my eyes and look down that corridor, 4 feet wide, and with 10 lonely seconds to justify my whole existence. But will I? It's all about whether he can win that race. But here's what the other one says, a Christian man. He says, I believe that God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. Which one do you want to be? Because there are going to be things in life that will absolutely shake you. Jesus told you this. He said in Matthew 7 that the storms of life will come, and what you have built your life upon will be washed away, and you will see the foundation. And either it is the rock of Jesus Christ, the identity that you received and did not achieve, or every achievement you have will be washed away. You can lose so many things in life, but God does not lose you. You're his child, and he gave you the right to live free. You may work the same job as somebody else. You may go through the same difficulties as somebody else. You may have everything blown up in your life by AI, just like everyone else in our culture, but you can rest and run knowing that you're his child. Go in peace.